Today we are going to talk to a very special guest, Ms. Devina Mehra, founder CMB First Global, about what should one really do if one wants to invest in gold, because gold is literally on fire. The prices are skyrocketing almost on a daily basis. So how should your golden portfolio really look like this Diwali? I'm joined by Ms. Devina Mehra. Ma'am, thank you very much for speaking with us here on Times Now. Firstly, wishing you a very, very happy Diwali.
Wish you, your team and your viewers, everyone a very happy Diwali and a great new Samvat.
Now, coming to the most important question in everyone's mind, we Indians love to buy gold during Diwali, but this time, 1,30,000 per 10 grams. Should we stay away? What's really happening with gold? What should people do?
I don't think this is the time to load up on gold for sure, because I was just looking at some headlines which said that in dollar terms, gold has not seen such a rally since 1979. So let's see what happened after 1979. So gold made a high in 1980 and it did not cross that high again for 27 long years. It went down. Even 19 years later, it was down 60% from these highs. Even after 2007, when it crossed the 1980 high, it went up 3-4 years. Again, there was a 40% crash. So gold in dollar terms has been extremely volatile. In rupee terms, it looks okay because it is essentially a rupee depreciation chart. So as I say, our grandmothers were not wrong in buying gold, because at that time, that was the only hard currency asset you could buy. You could not invest in overseas markets. But now you can invest in overseas markets. So gold and silver should be part of your asset allocation, but should not be, 30-40% of your asset allocation. I would say around single digit is all you should have in precious metals. And you should then invest globally, which is a different category that's available to you now. So you should have 30% or so of your investments at least globally, if not more.
But there are many investors that we speak with on a regular basis. They are having this FOMO, fear of missing out, because of several, reports coming out suggesting that perhaps by mid next year, gold globally might just cross even $5,000 per ounce mark. Even this year, we didn't really expect it to cross $4,000 per ounce. The expectation was somewhere maybe early next year, 2026, but that has already happened. So what's going to be your advice to those having this FOMO right now?
I would say in general, not just gold today, but I'm saying in general, FOMO is the very last thing that should drive your investing decisions. So whenever you're trying to chase anything which has done well of late, whether it is an asset class, whether it is a country or within a country and, any category, small cap, PSU, etc. So whenever you feel, oh, my friends have made money in this and I've been left out, and then you start to chase that asset class, that's going to systematically have you underperform. That is the data. And as Richard Branson says, opportunities are like buses. There's always another one coming along. So don't chase the bus which has already left the station, because you only fall down in the process. And as far as whatever people are saying, whether about gold or any other, even you will see all these Sensex and Nifty projections today for the new Samvat. If you actually collate the data on what people said over 10 years and what actually happened, you will see that these so-called experts are all completely off. So no one has this crystal ball to tell you what will happen to any asset's price in 6 months or 1 year.
Okay. Now, before I talk about other assets, other investment instruments, one more question on gold specifically. You spoke about what happened around 70s and 80s. We did see a bubble that time. Do you see something of that sort happening anytime soon? Or do you think this time perhaps the scenario is much different, because it's also the central banks across the world that are also responsible for this spike in gold prices that we are seeing globally?
So, Hina, the thing is this, that in markets, they say the most dangerous few words are, this time it is different. So every time anything like this happens, there's always an explanation as to why it is happening. Through the 70s, it was the high inflation and all that now gold has become the safe haven, and there were, of course, other factors also. So now it is this central bank thing. So while that shift has happened to some extent, it is not to say that gold will keep going up. I'm not saying it will go down tomorrow, but even silver prices, in the past have gone up crazily and then just gapped down. I mean, one of the big gap downs was when Osama bin Laden was killed, and suddenly, after 2 days, silver prices opened with a big gap down, so with a big fall overnight. So that sort of thing happens. So this is now in risky territory. And you can never say when something will fall. As I said, nobody can predict that price in the short term. But you're definitely in risky territory now. And Indians already, I think, hold enough gold. So you can sit tight on your gold as of now. I don't think there's any need to add at these levels.
Okay. Perhaps we should just inherit what our grandparents have already purchased for us. That's going to be sufficient for us. That's what you're saying. But, very interesting. You mentioned we are in a risky territory. So I want to, ask you a little bit more about what should one really be doing in this risky territory that we are into right now. There is global uncertainty. Wars are still continuing. On the other hand, there is this Trump tariff sword that's hanging around our neck. Now, with China also, Donald Trump, it seems, is going to get into trade war part 2. That's what many are talking about. So in this scenario, as an investor, what should one really do this Diwali?
So, I mean, risky territory, when I was talking about gold and silver, not, all asset classes. Let me clarify that. And as far as otherwise, my advice usually is pretty boring, which is that number one, look at your entire portfolio or investments. Never have 100% in equities or 100% in gold or 100% in anything. So have an asset allocation, have global exposure also within that, but then don't tinker around with it every day. So don't say that last 1 year Indian equities have not given much of a return, so let me now get out of Indian equities and go after whatever has done well of late. That's never a good idea. So have a proper asset allocation and don't then touch it too often, because equity returns, for example, are extremely lumpy. Sometimes you will get 5 years returns in 2 years and then nothing will happen for another 3 years. So that's how that market is, and therefore money put in equity should be money you don't require for 8 to 10 years. So have significant amount in equities, have some in gold, have some in fixed income, which is your fixed deposits, your tax saving schemes, and then some amount in, within fixed income is also the fixed income mutual funds and all that. You might have some real estate anyway, though I don't advocate real estate as an investment option, but you might already have a home here that you live in or that you want to buy to live in, which is a different consideration from financial investments. But have a mix of assets, make that mix deliberately, and then don't change it too often. I don't see the Indian market, for example, and any danger of a big crash, which is not to say that it can't go down a bit here and there, but I don't see a big crash coming. So you should remain invested again to the extent of your equity allocation. As far as geopolitics is concerned, interestingly, we've looked at 45, 50 years data. Any kind of war anywhere does not have a lasting impact on markets if your narrow focus is markets, not human rights and all that. So which was our call when the Russia-Ukraine war also broke out, that there will not be lasting impacts on markets except for the things like commodities which are directly impacted. And so also with the other hotspots in the world, US I do not think can really arm twist China beyond a point, because China, if I talk in the Diwali card terms, it holds all the aces. So it has been deliberately making sure that it controls the supply chain, it controls many critical technologies, it controls the manufacturing, of course. So basically, US cannot arm twist China the way US can arm twist India, for instance, because we do not have anything to hold over the US.
So what's your understanding of Indian economy, the India growth story?
So, I mean, of course, the Indian economy for some years was growing, but growing on the single engine of government spending. But the real consumption slowdown came at a point when I think other than me, nobody ever talked about it, which was 23-24. So financial year 24, when private consumption growth in the GDP was at a 21-year low. But because the markets were doing well, nobody focused on it. When the market started to correct September 2024 onwards, then suddenly everybody woke up, consumption slowdown, whereas at that time the consumption had already started to accelerate. So consumption has been doing better for the last year or so. And my call had been that it would do even better, and that is one of the reasons is the inflation coming down to almost historic lows. So much so that not only has inflation come down, the actual prices of certain goods have come down, like food prices in certain categories have come down. So that creates more room in the household budget to buy things other than food. So that's a good thing for the consumption story. There is also crude prices have come down, which means petrochemical prices have come down. That's a good thing for the margin. So overall for corporate earnings, all these are positives, to which now the GST reforms have been added. So that's the additional positive. Except that what will happen in the very short term is that because the GST reforms happened in the second quarter of the financial year, that's the July to September quarter, some purchases got postponed by the consumers, and also even after the reforms were announced, the companies took some time to figure out what happens to inventory that's lying with retailers or distributors or dealers. And so basically some revenue which should have been booked in the second quarter has got shifted to the third quarter. So the earnings real improvement might now come in the third quarter instead of the second quarter. So that's been the only short-term change. But yes, all these things are on the margin positive for corporate earnings.
Okay. Talking about the stock markets right now, they are at record highs this Diwali. Would you recommend Indian investors to book profits or stay invested for some time? What are your targets?
Stay invested. So that's what I'm saying. So whatever is your equity allocation, stay invested to the extent of that. So don't be in a hurry to get out, because that's the problem often. I mean, SEBI data shows that the majority of mutual fund investors, for instance, do not remain invested even for 2 years. So we have these lovely charts of 20 years and 40-year compounding, except that hardly anybody sees that compounding because they don't remain invested.
And which asset classes do you think are truly undervalued right now and have got great potential over the next 1 year?
I don't think you will see, I mean, within broad categories, you are, I can't say that I see great, something very, very undervalued. If you have too much in precious metals, then you can book some profits there and put it into other asset classes like equity. And I can just tell you which sectors we are overweight right now in our equity PMS and small case, and that would be, like if I look from 2024 beginning onwards, it's been pharma, healthcare, auto components. We've added autos a little more this year. We've added FMCG this year, so that's become overweight. And besides that, of course, we've added banks, so we are not overweight, but we're not as underweight as we generally are. Others have been more specific picks, like some chemical companies, some this and that. That's broadly where we will have higher than index weights.
Okay. And what's your outlook on IPOs? We just had LG's IPO.
IPOs, my view is that when there is too much frenzy in the IPO market, when it is, running at an abnormal pace, it normally doesn't make sense to get into that market because of two reasons. One is that at that time, most of what is being issued is overpriced. And suppose something is not overpriced, it's at the right price, it's in the right industry, you're unlikely to get much allocation. So either way, it doesn't help you much. And I would like to remind your viewers that whatever is the frenzy for a stock, or for that matter, the lack of frenzy for a stock in the IPO market, has very little to do with what happens thereafter. I mean, DLF was a very much anticipated IPO, and the company is running all those decades later, but the price didn't reach the IPO price for decades. Of course, you have extreme things like Reliance Power, which practically went to zero in spite of being a very, very, much in demand IPO. And if you look at on the other side, Infosys IPO was undersubscribed. So it made money for the underwriters because there wasn't even a one-time subscription for the Infosys IPO, one of which turned out to be one of the biggest wealth creators in the Indian market. So, IPOs have to be valued just the way any listed company is valued. But people seem to think it's some kind of lottery game, which is a dangerous game to play.
Okay. One last question before we let you go. If you were an Indian investor starting fresh this Diwali with say 1 lakh rupees, where would you put it? What is going to be, your golden portfolio? What will it look like?
So first of all, of course, there's no one golden portfolio for anyone because it depends for everyone because it depends on how old you are, when do you need the money, what are your responsibilities, what are your other goals. But as I said, you should not be 100% in equities, neither should you be 0% in equity even if you are retired because now your post-retirement age might be 30 years. So you have to budget even after retirement for quite a long time. So if you're looking at maybe something like if you have 40-50% in Indian equities, another 30% should be global. Global doesn't mean the US only. Again, I'm repeating that. Then you can have, if it's like 40 plus 30, maybe 10 in precious metals, 20 in fixed income. But that's as I said, it's it really depends on your life circumstances, your goals. And this is not really something that anyone should take as the gospel.
Thank you very much, Ms. Devina Mehra. Appreciate you speaking with us here on Times Now and sharing with us your perspective on where are we headed as far as gold, silver and the stock markets are concerned. Thank you for joining us.